Chapter 29. There was no warning. Suddenly, the helicopter was being brutally battered in a microburst of fierce turbulence. Clubbed by fists of icy air, the H-65 lurched like a groggy boxer. Then more strong blasts of spinning wind twisted the rotorcraft half around. Straining to keep control, Lieutenant Saldanha managed to guide his craft back on course. But it wasn't over yet. 10 seconds later, a powerful downdraft abruptly hurled the H-65 towards the ground. The big Aerospatiale, which now weighed more than 4 tons with its tanks full, dropped like a boulder. It fell 100 feet before Saldanha could gasp. It didn't stop. 200 feet, 300 feet, 400. Ernesto Saldanha's stomach knotted in instant reflex, but he didn't panic. The aircraft commander grunted and tried to fight back. With one hand, he immediately fed more fuel into the 2 jet engines to increase their thrust. At the same time, his other hand worked the control to adjust the angle of attack of the rotors. But the H-65 kept falling. Down, down. The moments felt like minutes. We're going to crash, Saldanha thought. We're probably going to die. Then the large rotorcraft shuddered, shook, and broke out of the murderous microburst. Saldanha felt somewhat relieved, but not at all safe. The surging storm could strike again at any moment, from any direction, in at least half a dozen ways. Any one of them could be lethal. His body reminded him of the danger. His shoulders hurt from the seat harness that had saved him from broken bones when the aircraft plummeted. His stomach muscles were still rigid with tension from the very recent crisis as he looked at the altimeter. 1,800 feet. The downdraft had dropped the H-65 a full 1,000 feet. Damp with perspiration, Saldanha held the helicopter on a search course and considered his options. He wanted to find that transmitter, but he didn't wish to die in the process. He decided not to climb back to 2,800 feet. A number of big, fast airliners were circling nearby in the storm at altitudes between 2,000 and 4,000 feet. With visibility so poor tonight and no air traffic control radar to help, there was a genuine risk of collision if the helicopter rose again. He'd take the H-65 even lower. 1,500. That ought to do it. Saldanha slowly moved the control forward. Beside him in the right seat, the co-pilot was cursing. It had nothing to do with the change in altitude. Vincent Babbitt had been swearing steadily for 5 minutes. The river of obscenities, none of them either original or colorful, had begun well before the microburst nearly killed them. He wasn't aware that he was cursing. The stream of oaths was like some exotic litany, a bizarre tribal chant to appease nameless and terrible gods who might protect him. Both pilots wore hard plastic flying helmets, brightly colored and equipped with built-in earphones. Saldanha had tuned his to the rotorcraft's intercom channel so he might stay in constant touch with his crew as the blizzard pounded the H-65. Babbitt was listening for something quite different. He was looking for it too, urgently. Leaning forward towards the instrument panel, he was utterly focused on the round glass face of the radio direction finder. Only 4 inches in diameter, the compact electronic device probably meant life or death for the thousands of people in those airliners. And perhaps for Vincent Babbitt too, the co-pilot thought. If it worked, this desperately dangerous flight might end soon, and the helicopter could return to the safety of its hangar. But if the direction finder didn't locate the jammer quickly, the H-65 would have to continue battling the massive storm. A chilling prospect. The visual display part of the direction finder resembled a compass. It had a rotating needle that was supposed to point towards the transmitter being sought. When the device detected the transmitter, the crewman operating the finder would hear a signal in his headset. As the search and rescue craft flew where the needle pointed and got nearer to the transmitter, the sound in the operator's earphones grew louder. So far, nothing was happening with the needle. There was no sound signal either. Maybe the storm was somehow playing havoc with the machine, the tense young ensign worried. Perhaps the terrorists' powerful jammer was blinding the direction finder with ECM transmissions. Electronic countermeasures such as those used to confuse radar scanners. Or the damn thing could just be broken. It didn't matter what the problem was, Babbitt reasoned. If the usually reliable DF equipment was not functioning, there could be no hope of locating the jammer, and no dishonor in returning to base. They might as well start back now. Babbitt reached over and tapped Saldana's shoulder. When the aircraft commander turned his head in response, Babbitt pointed at the dormant direction finder and shook his head. Then he gestured emphatically with his right hand, twice, towards their squadron home's airfield. Saldana studied the direction finder soberly for almost 15 seconds before he spoke into the mini microphone connected to his helmet. When he realized that the co-pilot didn't hear him, Saldana hand-signaled Babbitt to switch to the intercom setting. The junior officer complied at once. "Can you fix it, Vince?" the aircraft commander repeated. "I don't even know what the hell's wrong with it. I'm a chopper pilot, not an electronics expert." "There has to be something we can do," Saldana insisted. "Not us. Not up here tonight. Maybe God can fix it," the co-pilot said cynically. There was a bolt of lightning and thunder boomed. More lightning flashed by only yards from the helicopter. Then Vincent Babbitt swore again. Son of a bitch! The needle on the radio direction finder had moved. It was pointing to the northwest. The startled young ensign wondered what had happened. Was this another form of mechanical malfunction, or was the machine performing at last? There was one way to double-check. Babbitt swiftly turned the dial to switch his headset to the direction finder's audio location channel. His eyes widened and beamed 5 seconds later. "Ha! It's really working!" he exulted. "We've got the sound too! It isn't very loud, but it's there." "Then let's make it louder," Saldana replied with a smile as he turned the H-65 in the direction to which the needle pointed. Then he increased the fuel flowing to the pair of jet engines. They produced 750 horsepower each, and the standing orders were to fly these rotorcraft at 150 or 160 miles an hour. The outside limit for safe operations was 180. That was the speed at which Lieutenant Ernesto Saldana was now pounding his helicopter through the dangerous storm. And the sound did grow louder. At 180 miles an hour, the H-65 was closing quickly on the target. It was 3, 4, maybe 5 miles at most. Both pilots listened intently as the signal got stronger and stronger. The aircraft commander began to reduce speed. 2 minutes max, he said. It grew louder still. The level of sound was annoying now, but the Coast Guard flyers didn't care. 1 minute, Saldana estimated. He was wrong. Just 40 seconds later, they were staring at the direction finder when it happened. Without warning, the needle swung completely around and pointed in the opposite direction. Ha! Bingo! Saldana called out triumphantly. We did it! Son of a bitch, we did it! Babbitt celebrated. As the sound level of the signal in their earphones eased a tiny bit lower, Saldana turned the H-65 in a tight circle. He was heading back to the place where the needle had abruptly spun. That was the site of the terrorists' transmitter. Despite the massive snow and powerful winds, despite the first H-65 that wouldn't fly, and the microburst and downdraft that nearly destroyed the second, despite the finder that wouldn't work, despite everything, they had found the jammer. Now it was time to finish the job. They had to pinpoint the exact building, and that couldn't be done from 1,800 feet in this storm. I'm going in closer for a good look, the aircraft commander said as he inched the control forward. The helicopter descended rapidly. It was down to 900 feet by the time it flew over the warehouse that concealed Ito's transmitter. The needle swung around again, once more, before Saldana guided his craft into another curved course. The H-65 was only 500 feet above the streets as it approached the warehouse this time. They might hear us, Babbitt warned. Not in this storm, Saldana disagreed. As if on cue, a booming barrage of thunder began to fill the night, with more than enough noise to cover the sounds of the H-65's engines. Encouraged by this, Saldana took the helicopter down to 350 feet and reduced the airspeed to 70 miles an hour. With histamines flooding his bloodstream, the tense aircraft commander calculated the risks at near computer speed. There were two major dangers. First, several tall smokestacks and a microwave relay tower rose unpleasantly close to the target. A very small error in flying through here could be fatal. Second, the terrorists might have human or television camera guards on the roof. If Saldana brought the Coast Guard chopper in too low, they could see it, even if they didn't hear it. Once they knew they had been spotted, they might do anything. But Saldana knew that he had two things to do. He had to find out what was on top of that building. Then he must tell the police what he had seen, so they might smash in quickly with minimum loss of life in a surprise attack. There was only one way to examine that roof now, and he had to succeed on the first try. A second, low-flying pass was almost certain to be noticed and understood by the terrorists below. If Ernesto Saldana didn't do this exactly right, a lot of people would die. Soon. He couldn't delay. The building was directly ahead. He'd have about 3 or 4 seconds over it, and he had to see the roof clearly. Saldana pointed at a switch on the instrument panel to warn Babbitt what he meant to do. As the co-pilot nodded in comprehension, Saldana pressed the switch. The helicopter's powerful main searchlight instantly stabbed a big bright beam down through the falling snow. "Everybody check the roof!" Saldana ordered as he expertly banked the H-65 and slipped the rotorcraft even lower so that all 3 crewmen could get a better look at the target. A wire fence, several feet high, ran around the top of the building. Antennas, complicated looking, 4 of them. And what the hell were those things jutting out halfway up the sides of the smokestack? Now the helicopter flashed past the target, and the needle spun full circle again. With his eyes swiveling left and right, Saldana scanned the sides of the escape route and pulled back the control to regain altitude. There was the damn microwave tower 200 yards ahead, 7 or 8 seconds at this speed. Saldanha swiftly turned the H-65 sharply to the left and missed the tower by 50 feet. Ignoring the oath that exploded from his co-pilot's lips, the aircraft commander brought the helicopter up to 700 feet in a steady climb. As the H-65 leveled off, Saldanha turned on the radio to find out whether he might now report to the Coast Guard base. All he heard was Ito's man-made static. The frequency was still jammed. "Now what do we do?" Babbitt asked. Saldanha unzipped a pocket in his flying suit, reached in, and pulled out a 25-cent coin. He knew, though, that the call would be free. "What do you say?" Ernesto Saldanha asked. It was a startling idea, and a dangerous one. But the risk didn't seem that important to Vincent Babbitt now. Something had changed in him when the direction finder began to function. He had suddenly realized that it was possible. Despite the short time and long odds they faced, they could win. A boyish and naive American sense of coming from behind, a sentimental and preposterous conviction that good would triumph, an irrational belief that he could survive any hazard, and blind faith that nothing would defeat this helicopter crew tonight had obsessed him since the radio locator needle miraculously came to life. "Ha! Let's go for it!" Babbitt replied. Then the aircraft commander told aviation survivalman Luther King, who was manning the winch behind them, what he was about to attempt. "No shit, Lieutenant," King blurted. "No shit. Keep your eyes open." Saldanha swung the helicopter in a circle and took it down to 400 feet once more. The searchlight helped as they studied the buildings and streets below. It was only 50 seconds before Saldanha pointed down and adjusted the rotors so the H-65 shifted from forward to hover. "Here we go," he announced. Then, quite carefully, he prepared to land the helicopter in a parking and loading area behind a small factory. The open space was only 60 by 90 feet, and a large metal trash bin occupied some of that. There was a strong wind to fight too. As he struggled to hover the craft over the center of the small safe area, jarring gusts pushed and bumped him off course. The winds stopped. Saldanha immediately seized the opportunity. Maneuvering as carefully as a surgeon, he managed to guide the H-65 to the middle of the landing zone and started to descend. The big machine would stay on the ground here until the storm ended, he thought. He wasn't stupid enough to defy the odds any further tonight. 300 feet, 200, 100, 50. He reduced power steadily as he prepared to land. A powerful gust of wind jolted the helicopter, and another followed immediately before Saldanha could compensate in his steering. The H-65 lurched. Then Ernesto Saldanha heard a sound like a rifle shot, and he felt something. With no time to think about it, he guided the Coast Guard craft back to the middle of the open space and held his breath as he eased the machine down. "I do believe we hit something, Lieutenant," King said from his seat near the winch. "That building, I imagine," Saldanha replied and pointed at the factory a dozen yards away. As soon as he turned off the engines, he asked Babbitt and King what they had seen on the roof of the target. They hadn't noticed anything more than he had. They didn't know what was protruding from the high chimney either. Saldanha opened the hatch, climbed down from the helicopter, and looked at it through the tumbling snow. All of the 11 small blades on the tail rotor were intact. One of the main rotor's 4 big blades, each 18 feet long and made of very strong Kevlar plastic, was not. When the wind had slammed it against the factory wall, a 3.5-foot piece had been snapped off by the impact. That was what he had heard and felt. The aircraft commander, who normally detested clichés, found himself recalling Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will. Well, just about everything had, and he was still alive. He hoped his luck would hold out a bit longer. It did. Running through the swirling storm, he only stumbled once before he found a telephone booth 2.5 blocks away. Since there weren't many people in this industrial section of Queens, thieves hadn't ravaged the instrument yet. It still worked. Delighted by the dial tone, Saldana dialed 911. A woman answered. "Police Operator 7, she said crisply. "What is the emergency?"